everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight. And my very special guest is one and only Marie Speziale, who is near and dear to my heart and is one of my teachers. And Marie, say hi to everybody out there.
Hi, everybody.
And yeah, we have a lot of people already in here. So I thought I'll just go ahead and start asking the questions, and I'll try to keep admitting people as they come in. And if everybody just can mute themselves and stuff, and we'll get going. So Marie, I've always wanted to ask you a lot of these questions as long as I've known you, but could you talk about your beginnings? You grew up in Ybor City in Tampa, and you always mentioned to me about your father's kind of Cuban band. If you could just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Exactly, except some.
I think I got you now. Are we, wait, Marie, hold on. You got muted somehow. Hold on one second. Let me unmute you there. You're still muted. Can you unmute yourself, Marie? There you go.
Yeah.
Now you're good. Okay.
Okay.
Good.
I told you about me and technology, right?
Oh, you're doing just fine.
What I don't understand will fill volumes. But
that's right.
Anyway, yes. So I grew up in inner city Tampa, Florida. The area was called Ybor City. It was back in the middle of the 20th century. Was the cigar capital of the world. Both of my parents were cigar makers. They made hand-rolled Cuban cigars, and as a member of that community, I grew up hearing a lot of Cuban music, a lot of Afro-Cuban music, especially. And my dad, when he moved down to Florida from New York, he taught himself how to play piano, and he wound up in one of the Cuban conjuntos that jobbed pretty regularly in that community in the late 40s, 50s. And yeah, and actually that's the first time I heard a trumpet live was actually in my living room.
Wow.
Because from time to time, the band would come to rehearse at the house. Mark, something else is going on. No, I just lost you.
Oh no, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I've got you. No worries. So that was that was the first time you heard a trumpet. So how old were you at that point?
No, first time I heard a trumpet live. Obviously, right. I heard it, on radio. But the first time I heard it actually up close and personal was in our home.
Wow. And then you were, how old would you say at that point?
I was probably about 8 years old.
Okay.
Probably about seven or 8.
And then what year did you start? I mean, not what year, but how old were you
when
you started playing?
Yeah, the progression was the elementary school that I was attending started a music program, and the music teacher gave all of us a test, and the results of the test were pretty favorable. So he called, he called my parents and said, your kid shows significant potential, and we think she should be in the band, and maybe we could have her play flute or clarinet or something like that. And I was interested in playing, but I wanted to play trumpet. And at first, I wasn't going to play because my parents couldn't afford an instrument. There was very little discretionary income at the time. We always had a nice house, and we always had great food. You've never seen a picture of me where I don't look like I'm well fed, right? So never an issue there, but there just wasn't, they were pretty careful about how they spent their money. Right. And they decided that there was a piano in the house and that I should be playing piano because they weren't going to pay for a trumpet. I guess I made a pest of myself, and somehow they discovered through my mother's side of the family that there was someone, a distant cousin, who had a cornet that they weren't using. It was up in the attic. I can remember almost distinctly. I was so excited because we went over, my dad drove over, it was in Ybor City. We went and we visited this person, and I was really like, am I going to get this instrument or not? But yes, absolutely, they said I could borrow this instrument. So I started on an old beat up cornet. I had to keep the case together with my dad's belt, but I had something to play and I could be in the band, and that's all I cared about.
Wow. And that elementary school band, I know you and I have talked about this a little bit. Sounds like it was a great band. You know, we were just talking about this.
School kids.
For elementary school kids, why don't you tell people who else was in the trumpet section?
Well, I discovered this, there's actually another story in there, but maybe we could go to that other story later.
Sure.
So anyway, in that elementary school band, there were about 20 of us. My mother had this picture of this little elementary school band playing at a theater. We're all lined up in front of the stage. And I remember looking at the picture, and not until I was well into my career did I realize that, oh my God, here out of 18 or 20 kids were 2 trumpet players in this little inner city elementary school band that wound up with professional orchestral careers. The other person was Adele Sanchez in the National Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
And before everybody tuned in, remember I showed you the picture, and we discovered, I finally really looked at that picture. There were only 4 trumpets, 4 clarinets, 1 French horn, and then all across the back, all these percussionists.
Wow. And that must have been a really excellent elementary school band director you had too, for those things to come to fruition at some point. I mean,
hard to know. There are no recordings. You know, we're talking about 1952.
Wow.
That's kind of a long time ago.
It's a little bit long.
Yeah.
So
things have changed.
A little bit, yeah. Just a smidge. And so you were playing in the band, and then I know that you went on to study with a man named Robert Price when you were in high school, right? Could you talk about that? Because that sounds like it was a really important time.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I was fortunate enough to start studying with him when I was about, I would say, 11 years old, maybe max 11 and a half. My dad when my dad realized that I was serious about playing this instrument. I wasn't going to just, drop it. He decided that it was important that I learned how to read music, because he was self-taught. He could read chord changes. He could match pitches like crazy. He could listen to any song on the radio or TV and tell you exactly what key they were in, follow the chord changes, the whole 9 yards, but could not read a note of music. So he vowed that I was going to learn how to read music. I was going to learn correctly. So he started asking some of his professional musician friends about teachers in the area. And the name Bob Price kept coming up repeatedly. And so my dad contacted Mr. Price and arranged for me to play for him. And Mr. Price said very clearly in the conversation that he had a waiting list, but that he would be happy to hear me. And then if he thought that I had potential, that we would work well together, he would take me if he had a vacancy. So we made arrangements, and I went out and played for him, and somehow he found a vacancy right away. So I was fortunate enough to start lessons with him when I was about 11 and a half. And he was just an amazing educator. He was a very good trumpet player, but his passion was teaching, and he was just brilliant at teaching the basics, not just to trumpet players, but all the different instruments in the band. And he was so invested in all the kids and always held us to the very highest level. And I know from the time I started studying with him, he left no stone unturned. And the older I get, especially when I start looking in the rearview mirror, I realize that I would shudder to think what my career would have been like had I not had a teacher like him.
Wow.
Because he was, it was that significant, his ability to teach the basics, the fundamentals.
What kind of fundamentals did he work on? Was he Clark and Arvin?
Tone,
Tone.
tone, tone. Oh, it was all about the tone quality and using your air correctly and getting the best tone possible.
Yeah. And did you guys play back and forth quite a bit at that age? And what were the lessons like?
Some, but it was mostly about methodically going through the Arvin book. You know, every week he had assignments in all the different sections of the book, and yeah, if it wasn't, we wouldn't move away from it if it didn't sound good.
Right.
He really seriously wouldn't let me get by with anything.
Well, that sounds like a familiar theme with your teaching.
Gosh, I hope so. I hope so.
Absolutely. Of course it was. So that's amazing. So you studied with him from the time you were 11 until you went into school, right?
Well, and actually, at the time I started studying with him, he was a junior high school band director. And so my dad decided, in his infinite wisdom, that it would be really important if I could have a kind of a daily dose of this man, because it was obvious that I was already hooked. I mean, that the first time I stood up and played a solo and there was applause, that was it. Music chose me, trumpet chose me. There was just no looking back. So my dad actually went out of his way to find a way for me to attend that junior high school, which was out of our district. And he literally, he and my mother both made some huge sacrifices. At the time, like I said, at the time my parents were cigar makers, and they worked side by side, both my mom and dad, for 35 years, making handmade cigars in these sweatshops. Yeah. These cigar factories, Florida heat, no air conditioning, very few windows, sweatshops, trust me. Wow. And so what he would do is he would go into the factory, I think it was either half hour, 45 minutes before my mom. He would get all the molds ready, and he would come pick me up, drive me to Sulphur Springs. This was the days before expressways. So drive me all the way up to a different district, go back, pick up my mom, go to work all day, leave in the afternoon, and take my mom home, and then he would come and pick me up. And sometimes he would just, wait for me if we had band practice after. In fact, when I graduated from high school, we did the same thing through high school too, almost. He did this for 3 years in junior high school and then 2 years of high school. By my senior year, we had actually moved into the district where I went to high school. So my friends used to joke that on graduation night, they were going to give my dad the diploma, not me. They were so used to seeing him.
Oh, yeah. Marie, before we go on with this, I think somebody wants to say hello to you. 1 second.
Oh, no.
Kathy, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hey. Who's
Hello.
that? Hi, Doc. How are you?
Oh, my God.
You can't get away from us, kid.
Hey, you handsome dude. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I just wanted to know, am I using too much pressure? The trademark on my mouth is coming out the back of my head.
Doc, what do you mean? I need to take a lesson from you. Hey, bud. You've got it.
You've been giving me lessons my whole life.
Oh, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Hey, Kathy,
you're looking great.
What?
You're looking great.
You too. You too. I miss not seeing y'all at the conference this summer, at the convention. We got fingers crossed for next summer.
Yeah.
Where is this?
ITG. She said she misses seeing us at ITG.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well.
Yeah, but next summer for sure. How great did you
I hope so.
Doc, I've taken this time to go through a whole bunch of pictures. I've got some pictures of you when we said, starting from I think the first time you came to play with us, and you recorded with us. Also, when we celebrated your 75th birthday with Eric out at Riverbend. When you,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you blew us. I don't know if you realize it or not, but the whole
That
trumpet
was
section.
not my 75th birthday. It was my 57th birthday.
No.
Yeah,
Well,
it turned around.
oh man, I tell you, you played MacArthur Park, and Steve and Phil. We're all back there, just like. Listen, folks, this is how it's done. You started first with the flugelhorn, and then there was the interlude with the orchestra, and then you came in with the trumpet an octave above everybody, and pretty much obliterated all the front seats in the pavilion. Oh, those were the good old, sorry for everyone else. We're talking about good old times. You have to be a little patient with these gray hairs.
No, talk away. That's exactly what we wanted to happen.
This is fantastic.
Well, I'm
so
glad to see you. You're looking great. Are you riding horses?
No, but I do have a puppy dog.
Well, you can't ride a puppy dog.
I know. Doc, I would kill myself on a horse. I'm afraid, poor horse. I love animals. I don't want to mistreat any of them.
Okay.
So do you guys
What kind
have
of a
horses?
dog did you get?
I've got a mix. He's a mixed Havanese and Yorkshire Terrier.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe next time you can get a whole big dog, We just got a puppy,
What did you get?
a Sheltie,
Oh, cool.
a Shetland sheepdog. Boy, is he hell on wheels.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
He's a pretty big fella though, isn't he?
No, he's only like 13 weeks old.
Oh, he's a puppy. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's not full grown.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And
no, he's a baby.
He's something else.
What did you name him?
Benny, after my teacher,
Oh,
Benny Baker.
Benny Baker. Oh, cool. My little guy's named Niccolo Paganini Speziale.
Oh, wow.
I didn't
Or
know a
Nico.
dog. Well, go ahead.
Nico for short.
Oh, that's okay. By the way, I'm Italian.
Yeah.
I went over all the paperwork and I checked it over and over, and finally, yes, it turns out I am Italian.
You really are.
Yeah.
Hey, paisan. Well, the next plate of pasta's on me.
Well, I just had some, I made some tonight.
So did I. Yeah, see, simpatico. Well, that's
Well,
cool.
we'll have to get together and share the cooking.
Oh, for sure. Well, there's, every time we get together, there's never a shortage of conversation. So I would imagine that once we got together and started cooking, who knows?
Yeah. I miss all the good old days in Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah. It was, it's hard to explain, especially I know when I was talking to my students at especially down at Rice, because they'd never seen that hall. That hall is, don't you think, Doc, that music hall is one of the most beautiful halls in the world?
Yeah.
It's just
very large.
that's why, I mean, trying to describe that hall to anyone who, you'd have to be there to see how deep and high and wide, and
yeah.
Well, they've trimmed her down. They put her on SlimFast. You heard that, didn't you?
No.
Yeah, they pulled in the walls.
Wow.
They pulled in the walls up in the balcony and the gallery, and on the main floor. They've reduced. Remember when you first started playing with us, when you first came to play with us, it sat around 3,500 folks. Yep. And then they reduced it to just a little over 3,000, I think. Now it's way down to 2,200 or something like that.
Well, that's more of a normal size there.
Right.
You know.
Right, but
you can't reduce the history.
No, you cannot.
And
And that hall has some great history.
more good things happen for pops, symphonic pops there than any place else. You know, I'll get an argument from Boston, but I'll call it a toss-up.
Yeah, yeah, we certainly, you know, when you think about it, for the demographics in this town, Cincinnati, I mean, we more than held our own.
Oh,
And I'll put, you know, some of those Pops recordings, I'll
Yeah.
put them up against,
yeah,
you know.
they were pretty forward-looking, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
And you obviously developed such a lovely relationship with Eric Kunzel, you know. It was
Oh, yeah.
yeah, we had some great times.
Oh, we sure did.
Yeah.
How's your chops?
I haven't played, Doc, I haven't played in 7 years.
Really?
Really.
Well, how's that happen?
That was my choice.
Tell me how to do that.
No, that was my choice. You know, I just decided that it was time to enjoy some things in life that I hadn't enjoyed up to that point, and I knew that I would be really hard on myself to keep myself at the highest level possible, and I just didn't have the, you know, the outlets to play at a very high level. You know, I wasn't going to be sitting in a symphony orchestra again. I gave that up in '96. So
I tried to retire last week, and it lasted one day.
well,
Oh.
you've got your own category.
Well,
Your own
no,
category.
I decided this. I don't have to practice because I'm going someplace to do a concert or for some particular reason. I'm just doing it because that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing that for myself.
Good for you.
And I'm still finding out new stuff all the time.
Oh, every day, you know, and I find out new stuff every time I have to work with a new student. You know,
Sure.
we can learn so much from others. We seriously can learn so much from others. I feel so blessed that through the years, I've learned so much from so many people, you know.
Well, the best words I know about trumpet playing and learning came from Bud Herschel. And it was one word: practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, he was all about that.
If I talked to him on the phone, he said, "Gordon, how you doing? Did you practice yet? Don't forget now, practice, practice, practice."
Yeah, he was a trooper.
Yeah.
He was a trooper.
And he meant it.
Yeah.
He really meant it.
Yeah, yeah. And he was still playing to the very end. I know when I was down at Rice, I actually put together a program in tribute to him with the brass choir. And we had him down, and he came and he did 2 master classes for us, I should say. And it was like standing room only. I think every trumpet player within screeching distance of Houston was at the Shepherd School. And he was just so thrilled to sit there in the audience to hear us play, hear the kids play, you know. And
yeah, well,
it was cool.
Any respect that he gets like that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And he took out he had his C trumpet in this old gig bag that was made probably in the 50s or 60s, you know, when they first started making gig bags, and his little leather pouch that was worn. He pulled out his mouthpiece and right away started buzzing octaves, and the kids were like, they could, in disbelief.
They told me that when Bud retired, he stayed home and he would turn on the television, and he had a table by his chair. His mouthpiece was there. and he'd reach over every once in a while, pick it up, and do a little buzzing on the mouthpiece, put it back. And he, you know, he just had to have that mouthpiece on his face. That's all there was to it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that reminds me of someone else I know. I can't tell you how many times I've told the story about the very first time that you came to record with us. You know, those weeks were hard. We would have a double on Tuesday, right? Single on Wednesday, double on Thursday, then Friday morning dress, Friday night concert, come in the next morning and start recording, and then play the show on Saturday night. And then Sunday, we would either have a show at night, a recording early, or two recording sessions. Or if we had a show on Sunday night, we would record on Monday. And it was like a bloodbath. And you're in the midst of all this during your lunch hour, and while everybody else is trying to get blood back in their lip, you're back there practicing. It's like nonstop.
You never know, it might go away.
That's what I wondered about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I know you're working there, so I'll get out of your hair.
Well, you know what, Doc? I'm so glad. I mean, I'm humbled, and I just really appreciate that you and Kathy tuned in for this this chat session, because I have to admit, this was talking is. Oops, sorry, my little dog just. Nico, come here. It was nerve-wracking to think that I was going to have to sit here and talk about myself for about an hour. It's just like, I'd rather be playing trumpet or teaching, you know?
Well, every time you play it is teaching.
Yeah.
And, you
I
know,
hope so.
it never stops. It never stops.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I thought to myself this morning, I was thinking about what Benny Baker said to me. Last time I saw him on the street, and I knew I was never going to see him alive again. And he says, well, it just boils down to two words. I've said this to you before, and I'm going to tell you one more time. It's tension and relaxation. That's all there is to it. And you know, I've tried everything else, and it always goes back to tension, relaxation. But
You got to get the old air going.
You're talking about, yeah, the air, but also after you keep doing it for a while, you get so strong here
Right.
that the corners overwhelms everything else.
Right.
So now you got to
So you don't beat up. So you don't beat this up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and back off a little bit and do it a little easier.
He's got it.
Well, okay.
Hey, Doc,
Yeah.
I'd love to get you to do this sometime in October, okay?
Why not?
Why not?
Woohoo!
All right, we'll do it.
Okay. Love you, Doc. Love you, Kathy.
I love you too, sweetheart. You take care, and I'll see you guys.
Thank
I'll
you
see
so much, Doc.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks, Kathy,
Yeah.
so much.
You are welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, what a surprise.
That may or may not have been arranged. So
Okie dokie.
I knew that would be fun.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, before we leave the subject of Doc, was that 75th anniversary concert the one where Phil Collins and Steve Pride wore the sequins?
No. That was another. I think that was another auspicious concert at Riverbend.
I remember that concert because, well, why don't you tell the story? You're in the orchestra.
Oh, okay. So Doc was our soloist, and we rehearsed the program in the morning. Came in that night, and on the program was Bugler's Holiday. So we're at the concert. and the Bugler's Holiday was the second piece on the second half of the program, and I knew that, and this was actually after I had retired. I was an extra at that point. Yeah, this was in retire. I was there playing in retirement, but Steve and Phil were going to join Doc to play the Bugler's Holiday. So Eric's out front and he's talking about Doc and how Doc's going to be joined by two members of the trumpet section, Phil Collins, Steve Pride. Would you help me welcome Steve and Phil? And everybody starts clapping, and out walk Steve and Phil. And sometime between the dress rehearsal and the concert, they had gone to a costume place and picked up these schlocky jackets and hats. They looked like they belonged to a barbershop quartet. Eric and Doc both lost it. In fact, they sputtered trying to get the Bugler's Holiday off the ground. The very first entrance, people were just cracking up. It was the most hysterical thing, because especially if you know Phil and Steve, of course. Phil is very, very proper, very quiet, and you wouldn't think that he would go along with something like this, but chances are he's the one that came up with the idea. And Steve just probably went along with it, and Steve could be, pretty straight-laced too. So, but this took Doc and Eric by surprise, which very few people have ever been able to do.
That was a really great moment. I didn't realize that everybody didn't know about that, I think, until I saw you the next week.
So you were there?
I was at the concert. Yeah.
Oh, I guess I'd forgotten that, Mark. Yeah, but it was hysterical, wasn't it? Right?
It was amazing.
They tried two sets of double tones and they couldn't get going,
And if people don't know that recording of Doc's classical album, Trumpet Spectacular, with you guys, that's a great recording.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's a top 10 for me for sure with him. So
yeah, he did some really good albums with us. But like I said, when he was talking, it was amazing. These weeks were like so, really, he wasn't coasting. It wasn't any sotto voce and I'll, take it easy because I got a program tonight. He's back there at intermission practicing and lunchtime practicing. And the rest of us are trying to find ice for the chops,
Some inspiration, even at the tender age of 90, whatever he is. It's amazing.
Yeah, 90. Yeah.
So
it's amazing.
Well,
amazing.
I'm looking forward to seeing him sometime in October. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Good.
That'll be a lot of fun.
You'll have to let me know. So I'm gonna.
You can Zoom bomb him on that one. That'd be great.
Right. Yeah.
Well, so we'll go back to where we were a little bit.
Where were we anyway?
We were talking about Robert Price, and we were talking about how we kind of set you up to play and to go into to school at Cincinnati.
Right.
But before I get exactly into that, I want to know where and how you learned how to play jazz so well. There's a lot of people might.
Well, it's just it's instinct. I really didn't have any formal training in jazz, and I've always felt that I was basically a legit player attempting to play jazz, well, I guess it was a little better than that.
Yeah, I think so.
But no, it was just something that I picked up tunes by ear, and I wound up, I was playing club dates. In fact, I joined the union before I was 16 years old. The contract sat on the president of the union's desk until I was old enough to sign it. I was already playing,
wow.
Jobs. I was playing jobs with grown-ups. In fact, at age 14, I was in a group that we had our own television show in Tampa, Florida, for 22 weeks.
I didn't realize it was that much time. I thought it was like a once appearance here or there.
Oh, no. It was a weekly show, and it was actually the advent of TV, of live TV. They started NBC. There was an NBC affiliate, was the first one in Tampa, and so we wound this little group, and it was weird, this conglomeration of instruments. There were only 4 of us. You would think it wouldn't work, but somehow we pulled it off. It was an organ, an accordion, double bass, and trumpet.
Wow. And what was the name of the group?
3 Queens and a King.
3 Queens and a King.
Yeah, and there were 2 high school. The bass and the accordionist were in high school, and the organist and I were in junior high school. I was 14. I think I was around 13 when we started playing together, and 14 when we had the TV show.
Now, I know you heard a lot of Afro-Cuban music when you were growing up. Were you listening to other players, a lot of jazz when you were growing up too? You remember anything
No,
specific?
not really. It was mostly what I heard in the community, and certainly not. I didn't have any classical music that I to speak of in my background. In fact, you've heard me say this before. Growing up in inner city Tampa, that chubby little kid, if somebody had said I was going to sit in a symphony orchestra to make my living, I was go like, really? I don't think so. But here we go.
Wow. Well, we just never know what's going to happen. That's incredible. And obviously your ears are very, very developed because of this too, because you're playing by ear and.
Oh, I did a lot. I was playing. Even though my dad, like I said, he insisted that I learn how to read music. I was also picking things up by ear, and he's the one that would encourage me to ad lib.
Mm-hmm. Was there any when you studied with Robert Price? You said he really wanted you to learn to read music. Were you doing solfege? Was that part of it? Was there a lot of
No, he did not teach me solfege. But one thing that he did insist on, and he did every lesson, he would throw sight reading at me. He really would. He would challenge me, throw sight reading at me. When the lessons were at Arthur Smith, which is where I met Mr. Bach, Vincent Bach, because we were talking about that. That's how I met Mr. Bach. He came in to promote his trumpets at the music store there. And if there was anyone in just within spitting distance of the studio that he taught in, he'd grab them and he'd bring them into the studio and he'd have me play for them. Like he would put me on the spot from the get-go. Here's this person who's whatever they are in the community, play. So I would just, he would show me off, but he was testing me.
Right.
He was testing me. Yeah.
And
he would make me sight read in front of them too.
Wow.
Oh yeah. I'd play something and they'd go, okay, let's throw something new at her,
Wow. How lucky were you?
I seriously, that's what I'm saying. It just,
yeah.
Because, I was just so fortunate.
Wow. And so you met Vincent Bach then, and tell the stories about the relationship with Mr. Bach.
Mr. Bach, yeah, I became sort of I'll call it a pen pal, because I met him, and when he returned to New York, he sent me not a care package, but he sent me a package with manuals, his autographed solo, the Fantasy No. 3, bottle of valve oil, all these things, even with the little list, the little invoice list, no charge, but he was always very formal. It was always, dear Miss Speziale.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you still have some of those letters, right?
I've got to dig those things out. Yeah.
That's incredible.
I might still even have the little invoices too.
Wow. I wonder if you still have the valve oil.
I might. No, I got it. I probably used that.
And do you still have, and this is off topic a little bit, do you still have the white Bach plastic mute?
Oh, the milk jug?
Yeah.
No, I can't remember who has that now.
I wanted to steal that mute from you so bad.
Oh, I know. You know, they didn't make many of those mutes. I'm sorry. I bet a lot of the folks that are listening in have no clue what we're talking about.
Yeah, Bach made a really great plastic mute that was white before the sort of brown or black mutes they make now. That was really fantastic. So a straight mute.
There are very few of those. That
Yeah.
must have been a prototype. I don't know how I was fortunate enough to get my hands on it. And then they went from the white mute, they went to the black. That first black mute was kind of like a rubbery plastic, which was, I thought, much better than the hard plastic. It was a more subtle sound.
Yeah, yeah. I remember you let me use that on a Shostakovich 11 concert. That's what I
There
used
you
on.
go.
So at least I got to play on it once. So how did you wind up in Cincinnati?
You know, I think it was destined to happen, because as I, again, looking back over my life's experiences and looking through pictures and all sorts of memorabilia, it seems that the word Cincinnati appeared, you know, I was starting to hear about Cincinnati when I was early in high school. Mr. Price's best friend, who was also a band director, French horn player, was a graduate, I should say, of the Conservatory of Music. Back in those days, it was Conservatory. I don't think they had merged yet when he was in school. And then along comes Al Hurt, who becomes really popular. And Mr. Scott was a friend of Al Hurt's. So here we go again, Cincinnati. And then I attended the Florida State University band camp in 1956. So I was, 13, 14 years old? And the professor there at FSU was a graduate of the Conservatory of Music and another good friend of Al Hurt's. So it felt like at every turn, there was some mention of then it became CCM, College Conservatory.
Because Al Hurt was a graduate of CCM, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, and also because through my life, I had always heard, even though I had relatives in New York, my dad was not a fan of New York. And I guess I heard that so much that I didn't even try for like places like Juilliard or anything like that. It was just Cincinnati was where I was zoned in on. And, it worked well.
Yeah.
It really worked well. So.
Yeah, clearly. And then you went and studied with Eugene Blees. So I wanted to see if you could talk about what those studies were like, because that's really the beginning of your career when you met him after not too long there, right?
Well, right. Very soon after I met him, I had some significant opportunities to play with the orchestra. And I was playing catch up because, like I said, I had very little background in orchestral playing. And it was at CCM that I was really introduced to the orchestral world. And in my junior year, I was afternoon, got a call, was Mr. Blee. He was down on the first floor of the dorm where I lived, and he asked me to come downstairs because he had something important that he had to discuss with me. And I was thinking, oh, what did I do now? Whoops, And so I get down there, and he tells me that they're supposed to play a concert that night, and the second trumpet player, Mr. Donofchek, has become quite ill, and they needed someone to fill in and sight read the program. And he said, I know you can do it, and we'll talk through things, and we'll play the program. So I did. He actually drove me to the concert, and all in black, and we went over what we were going to play. It was the Bach Orchestral Suite Number 4, Defia 3-corner hat Suite 2, and the Prokofiev 5. And
You sight read Prokofiev 5 on the concert when you were what, a sophomore
with
in
Maestro,
college?
with Maestro Rudolph.
Wow.
So on the strength of that, the Maestro said that if Mr. Janowczyk was going to be out for any length of time, he wanted to make sure that I would be the person to be playing. And that was my junior year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you played second trumpet your junior year.
Yes, pretty
That
much
was-
the entire season. Now, remember back in those days, a season in the orchestra was approximately 28 to 32 weeks.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So you were in school, doing school
I was in
ensembles.
school. Yeah, and fortunately, it was my junior year. Had that been my sophomore year, I'm not sure if we could have managed it because of my coursework. But by the time I got to my junior year, it was mostly ensembles, lessons, and a few sporadic courses that I could be there for, because back in those days, you could, if you looked at the orchestral calendar, unlike what you see now where they've got so many services and there no 2 weeks really look alike. Back in those days, it was copy, paste, copy, paste, copy. It was the same format. They knew when they were expected to be there for orchestra rehearsals and concerts. And also because back in those days too, the instrumental faculty at CCM was orchestra players, including the conductors. The conductor of the orchestra at CCM was the associate conductor of the symphony.
Wow.
Mr. Glover, who had the band, brass choir, and wind ensemble, was the second trombone in the orchestra. So all the ensemble rehearsals were at night. So I was playing in the orchestra in the day and the ensembles at CCM at night.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That is a steep and fast learning curve you were on.
Very, very fast. And you know what? I mean, you talk about being blessed, and I know you've heard me say this, and I'll probably, most everybody that really knows me, they're probably tired of hearing me say this, but I was so blessed because not only did I have Mr. Price, I had Mr. Bleak, I had Mr. Glover, who was a tremendous advocate, a tremendous mentor. And then here I am with Max Rudolph, who I learned the orchestral business. I learned the orchestral rep under fire with a great conductor. I thought it would always be like that. I thought all conductors were going to be like Max Rudolph. So I learned, I learned under fire. Nothing teaches faster than experience.
What kind of changes did you notice in your playing during this learning curve? Do you remember anything where like, oh, I didn't realize this is what actually has to happen in this spot, like note lengths or the way you articulated or the way you blended or played in tune?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, what I did was I kept my ears open and my mouth shut. And I just tried to pick up from everything that was going on around me. And at that time, I had people like Mike Hatfield, who was principal horn. I mean, I'm sitting here and here's Mr. Blee and then here's Mike Hatfield. So I'm learning some real musical concepts from everybody around and behind me and in front of me and on the podium.
Right.
And yeah, so.
And you've always spoken about Maestro Rudolph like he was a very nurturing conductor.
Very.
Right?
Yeah, he was, it was the best of all worlds. It was back in the days when your principal conductor was there 98, probably 99% of the time. If he maybe did 1 or 2 guest conducting spots in the season, that was max. He was our music director, our music conductor. He was our psychologist, our friend, our mentor, he was just, yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And beyond that, Mrs. Rudolph used to bake these little schnecken cakes at Christmas time and hand out homemade goods, right, to orchestra players. in the library. Everybody stood in line and got their little schneckens.
I don't think anybody can even imagine that now.
No, it's a different time. Different time.
Well,
yeah.
so you were second trumpet, and then when did the position come open that you actually?
No, I
wanted?
wasn't second trumpet.
No, for that
I
1 year you
wasn't
said.
second trumpet. I went in that my original contract was assistant / I think it was utility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then when Mike Donofchek passed away, I'm sorry, he didn't pass away then. He moved down. He chose to move down when Herb Tiemeyer retired. So they put me in on second. I was assistant / second. And then when Shippers came in, I was associate.
Got it. Okay. So when was that audition? That was your.
Oh, the audition was in my senior year.
Wow.
The audition for the job was in my senior year.
And that too was a little bit of a different time. Can you kind of talk about that audition and how that all
Sure.
happened?
Well, actually, in my junior year, I played almost the entire season on second, and then in my senior year, I played almost the entire season on third because Herb Tiemeyer passed away, and the word up at the conservatory on the hill was Marie's killing off the trumpet section in Cincinnati. But anyway, so I did the third trumpet thing, and on the strength of two consecutive years of a three-man section, literally three-man section, when two players are experiencing health problems, I think that's when the orchestra just decided they needed to add that fourth player. And it was already going that way because Rudolph was building that orchestra. He just improved the stature of that orchestra unbelievably. I mean, to the point where we even did a 10-week world tour under his baton, you know? So they decided to add the fourth trumpet in the section. And there was a national audition. I do remember some folks, interestingly enough, when you were asking me about this, when we were talking about doing this interview, about some of the folks that showed up, there were actually two people that I remember who were actually my age or slightly older. They had just either were at Eastman, one from Eastman and one from Curtis, but then there were some people who already had jobs in the industry.
Yeah.
So, but that was in my senior year.
Wow.
And the audition was in the maestro's office, backstage music hall.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a very large room. It wasn't a very large office, but I'll tell you who was in there. Obviously, it was the maestro. It was the associate conductor, Hyde Yajan.
Mm-hmm.
It was the trumpet section, principal trombone, tuba, Mr. Glover, president of the union, personnel manager in this little room. And literally, those of us that were auditioning had our backs to the door that we entered. We
Mm-hmm.
literally had pretty much our backs to the door, stand in place and playing to this committee. And also back in those days, there were no lists.
Right.
Anything was fair game. Of course, you could always count on Petrushka, you could always count on the Leonore first. Back, not as much in this day and age, but in my generation, it was a given. Especially Leonore 3 that was the first thing.
Right.
Crack open the box.
Yeah.
Jack in the box. And then you could tell. You could seriously, having served on so many committees, you can tell in that first fanfare whether you've got somebody that's going to be a candidate or not.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing like a major triad to eliminate swaths of people for an audition. So then you won the job, and this was like really, and you were the first. You really cracked sort of a glass ceiling at that point, right?
I did. I didn't realize it at the time, and not for many years did I realize that I had never connected the dots.
Right.
I had never thought about, oh, I'm the only woman trumpet player in an orchestra, or that, oh, you're the first trumpet, you know. It was confirmed when Susan Slaughter started the IWBC, the International Women's Brass Conference.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you about, can you talk about the importance of Betty Glover and then later on Susan, and kind of how their friendship with you? And
oh yeah, well, of course, Mrs. G, Betty Glover, she's affectionately known, was my teacher too. I was in her brass orchestral repertoire class. She's the one that actually, she was, talk about a pioneer. Not only was she a pioneer in terms of her trombone playing, but she was, I believe, the first woman trombone player to get an orchestra job. It was a Kansas City Phil back in the, I think it was 40s, early 50s maybe. But she was a visionary. She was putting together this brass orchestral class to read through brass, you know, all the big brass pieces in Cincinnati, when I don't think anybody else in the country was doing it. And she was really good friends with the librarian in the symphony. They both loved good food and wine. So she would go in there and he'd help her, you know, pick out all the brass parts. And I don't know if I've ever shown you some of those parts where they had to put them together in two pieces. You know, they would, it was quite a process just to get one, you know, one set of parts, brass parts. Yeah.
wow.
So she started this brass orchestral repertoire class, and then when she retired from CCM, she said, I think you ought to take the brass rep class. It was like, really?
Yeah, and that was one of the most valuable classes of school for sure. Oh, here, are we going to see the dog here?
Yeah, I'm shutting the door because Niccolo Paganini is
he's
practicing.
He's practicing.
He's practicing.
And then just a few years after you joined the CSO, Susan Slaughter was in St. Louis, right? It was about, am I right about that?
Right.
About 4 years later.
On the strength of my having won the job in Cincinnati, her teacher at IU said, look, you ought, you know, go. Someone else did it. You can do it too, you know.
And early in your career, there's a picture I'm going to pull down in just a second. Can you talk about the Duke Ellington experience with your, it was your first season, right? Duke Ellington came to play with the Cincinnati.
Oh, Duke Ellington came, no, it was actually either 1965 or 1966. It was when Eric got the job as associate conductor. Oh, you're going to show the picture?
I'm going to show the picture, just not the autograph. So if people can see this picture, there's Marie and there's Duke Ellington.
And Joe Benjamin. Joe Benjamin on bass.
So can you tell the story about how exactly this went down? Because I think it's an amazing story.
That was one of the first Pops concerts that Eric conducted with us before we came the Pops Orchestra, the Cincinnati Pops. And it actually was one of the very first crossover concerts of a jazz giant and an orchestra. And the Duke played several numbers on the first half, and then we were about almost to the end of the second half of the program, and he was, you know, he was thanking the audience and thanking Eric and the orchestra, and telling everybody what a great time he had in Cincinnati, and, you know, be sure to support your orchestra. This is a good group, you know, that kind of, you know,
right.
Let's make sure everybody comes back to the concerts, live music, you know.
Right.
And so next thing I know, he says, by the way, I hear that there's a trumpet player, trumpet player in the trumpet section, or someone in the trumpet section that really likes to play jazz. Hey, Marie, you want to come up and play a tune? Unbeknownst to me, no, Eric, nobody clued me in. I was just sitting there like, did I really hear that? You know, and the guys are going, are you going to do it? It's like, yeah. What do you mean? Duke's going to ask you to play and you're not going to go, you know? So I walked out front and we talked a little bit. He was a lovely person, really sweet. And we picked a key and we started faking a blues. And then we played a ballad. He invited the principal clarinetist to come and play a ballad with us. And then we wound up with a faster blues and a quicker tempo and another key.
Do you remember what the tunes were? I thought you said maybe Lush Life or something. Did you tell me that?
No. Wait a minute. The ballad was Body and Soul. Body and Soul. But the others were just a blues, faked a blues head, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
And it was interesting because that was such an important concert. Like I said, it was a major crossover concert that the Associated Press picked it up, and it got to Downbeat and very likely some other magazines and some other publications. And in it, they gave credit to Duke inviting some orchestra players to play, amongst them Mario Speziale, where I guess they refused to believe that it was a woman, so they changed the E to an O. And I don't know, a few weeks after that concert, I ran into a gentleman who did a lot of the photography for the orchestra, and he came up, he was so effusive. Ray, he said, I was so glad I was at that Duke Ellington concert. That was great, yada, yada, yada. He said, I'm so glad I had my camera with me. And it was like, and he says, and the pictures were great. And I was like, you have a picture? He says, yeah, I have pictures. And so that's the backstory on the picture that's hanging on your wall.
Well, and the thing about that, in your typical self-deprecating way, at an ITG, I saw you. I said, "Would you please? I'd like a picture in my office. Would you bring, maybe a copy of the Duke Ellington picture?" And you said, "Oh, I brought the picture." And I said, "Is this the real one?" And you said, "Yeah." And so I said, "I'll be right back." And you remember, I got about 50 copies of that picture. And you said, "Who's going to want this?" And then, like within about 20 minutes, there was a line around the block. Like it was, like people were camping out to get you to sign one of those pictures. So I was very grateful that you brought that to that conference and that people were able to get that. Because that's an amazing picture.
It is. It seriously is. It was just that was one of those kind of like fork in the road, or like, it's just one of those things that you'll never ever forget. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, and you had like a ton of amazing conductors you played under. I mean, just to list a couple, obviously Max Rudolph, but you had Stravinsky, Copland, Bernstein, Leinsdorf, Ormandy, Zell. Can you talk about some of those? I mean, those are similar
Mark,
figures.
I don't know that I ever shared this with you. The first time I ever played the Rite of Spring or heard the Rite of Spring live was with Stravinsky on stage.
On the podium.
And, unfortunately, he was too frail. It was toward the end of his life. He was too frail to conduct the Rite of Spring. So his associate, Bob Kraft, conducted the Rite of Spring, but he was there for every minute of every rehearsal. He would sit there with this kind of stately demeanor, and when he had to make comments, he would make these comments in these booming voice, Wow. And it was really something. Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, wow. When I rewind that tape, to think, Rite of Spring, first time, Rite of Spring, Stravinsky's there.
And that was your last concert with the CSO officially, right? If I remember that correctly.
Are you thinking about when I had to jump in at the last minute to play Heldenleben, the Strauss?
No. I'm thinking about I thought your last subscription concert might have been Rite of Spring when you were still in section.
Right, with when Chris.
Yes.
When Chris got the job, yeah.
And you played the first C trumpet part.
You know more about my career than I know about my career.
I just remember being there at that concert and you laying waste to everything in sight. So, in the most musical of ways, of course. So,
good. Thank you for that.
Of course,
especially
always.
Since I have some former students that are listening in, the Klausmans in Georgia. They're down in Georgia.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know
I
they're
don't know if you
listening
know
in.
Jonathan. I had an opportunity to work with him at UT a couple of years ago, and
Oh, yeah.
his dad. They've both tuned in.
They've
They're
been
supposed
in,
to. And
oh,
Nyram.
no, I'm sure they're watching on Facebook. They're both on there watching, I'm sure. And what about some of these other conductors? Do you remember playing for Zell or Ormandy? What were those guys like?
Oh yes, yes. In fact, the best Beethoven ninth ever, best ever with George Zell. It was just electric. There's just no way. You know, you talk about artists and the it factor.
Wow.
It's hard to put into words. I know you've interviewed Mike Sachs and some of the other folks that very likely have had opportunities to play with George Zell.
Well, maybe not Sachs, since Zell died.
No, that's right. He was young. He's
Yeah.
He's a youngster.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm one of the oldest of your interviewees.
I think you're the senior member.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I guess you will not have interviewed anybody that played for Zell.
No, I don't think so. No.
Oh, it was. Yeah, Mike is too young. Mike is too young.
But so what was that week like? I mean, you know, was he hard?
Oh, it was intense. It was intense.
Right?
Oh yeah, and of course he and Maestro Rudolph were such great friends too. And so there was this. I mean, we obviously we respected all the conductors that came in, but I think there was that added. You know, we have to bring it for Maestro Rudolph. You know,
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
What about, do you remember anything with Copeland or Bernstein? Anything stick out about those weeks? Oh, there's a face. There's a story behind that face. Go ahead and tell it. They're not around.
Should we?
When the glasses go on top of the head, we're
Great
going
music.
into overdrive.
Great music.
Okay. Got it.
Fantastic experience.
Yes. Yes. Your story is reminding me of a lesson I had with Bernie Edelstein. He had a wall of conductors in his office that were all assigned to him. And I said, Mr. Edelstein, who are your favorite conductors to play for? And his response was, the dead ones. So
he was a character. I heard he was a real character.
Oh yeah. I mean, and when we get off, I'll tell you what he said about my tonguing. So, which you can imagine it wasn't actually positive. By the way, a couple people said hello. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Nyram Simones?
Nyram.
Nyram.
Yes. I just did a Zoom masterclass for him last week down in Arkansas. Hi, Nyram.
And you're going to like this one from Isabella Vigil. She says, this is being her third year playing the trumpet. She's the only female 8th grader to play trumpet from her middle school. Her band teacher from last year encouraged her to play and see your stories of being a professional female trumpet player.
Yay! You go, Isabel.
So let's see. So still in your CSO time, I wanted to, and I know this is really important, I wanted you to talk about Arnold Jacobs and how that influenced your life.
Where do I start? Man. Yes. Yeah, what do you want me to do? What do you want to hear about?
Well,
I mean, everything you probably ever heard about Arnold Jacobs is all true. He was unbelievably motivating. He was larger than life. So every lesson with him was an inspiration.
Right.
And so positive. And, I was just really fortunate in that I made a choice to go see him because I had been hearing such great things about him. And I was obviously very interested in teaching. That's what I was doing. I was at CCM and I thought, I want to go meet this man. I want to experience, the Arnold Jacobs lesson. And I think it would help me in my teaching, to bring back to my students. And I used to drive up whenever he could fit me in, I would drive up on my day off, Monday, drive 5 hours up, take a lesson. You know, you have to get there an hour in advance just to find a place to park to get into the, you know, the school there. Take a lesson, jump back in the car, and then slip and slide sometimes all the way back to Cincinnati in the middle of snowstorms and sleet and everything. And it was worth every ounce of energy and every penny I spent just to take lessons from him, because particularly as he became known as the fixer, you know, when there were people, not just brass players, just wind players in general. If careers were in jeopardy, they would seek out Mr. Jacobs, and he was really instrumental in getting some careers back on the right path. So he would have you call, you know, to make an appointment. I would call him, and he'd say, well, this big booming voice. He'd go, Marie, I can see you on Monday, yada yada, such and such a time. He says, but remember, you call me on a Sunday night just to confirm that I can see you, because you know you're not in trouble. But if I have somebody who's in trouble, I have to see them first, you know. So he always made that very clear. So I would dutifully call him on a Sunday night, and most of the time I was really lucky. I was able to, you know, make the trek the next day. But there were times when he'd say, I'm really sorry, but I've got somebody that's coming in that's in trouble. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so talk about a little bit about, because, you know, you're not the tallest person, and you've always mentioned to me about your lung capacity and how similar that was to Mr. Jacobs, which I think would surprise some people.
Yeah. Yeah. I have just a little less than 2-liter capacity, which is not a whole lot when you're sitting in front of Pete Norton, right?
Right.
Bass trombonist in the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, who probably has 7 or 8 is my guess, you know. Yeah. And also, as Doc said, you know, that the music hall is a big hall. I mean, you really needed to play efficiently to survive that hall, especially once they started messing around with the acoustics in there. It was like, it became a little thorny, as you well know. That hall.
Well, I've only played in there about 10 minutes, so I don't know.
Okay, but you. But you know the hall is huge, and you know what some of my colleagues who wound up with significant chop issues because of that hall, because it'll eat you up and spit you out if you don't play efficiently. Right. And so, and that was in the back of my mind, the aging process, everything, a number of things were converging. Also, this was shortly after I had been diagnosed and was almost fully recovered from Meniere's disease. So I thought, you know.
Tell folks what that is in case they don't know.
Okay, Meniere's disease is an inner ear disorder, and some of your symptoms are you lose your balance easily, headaches, things that precipitate some of the severe reactions, loud sounds, in conjunction with like a temporary setup, like a riser. So here I am in a symphony orchestra on risers, timpani to my right, and percussion, trombones behind me, and I'm surrounded by sound. There were times just before I was first diagnosed, there were times when I was leaving the rehearsal, I thought my head had been used as a batting ram. Wow. It was really scary. And the first doctor that I went to was treating the symptoms and not the cause. And every time I would describe a different episode, he would prescribe another medication. I was already, you know, having to hold on to my chair with my left hand just to keep from falling over. Wow. So the time that the very last time I saw him, his recommendation was, well, I think we need to think about surgery to the ear. And it was like, whoa. Yeah, thank you, but no thanks. I mean, obviously I was, very nice. I didn't say it quite like that, but I was checking around to see if I could find a doctor where I could get a second opinion, which I, thank God, did find someone who treated the problem holistically. And, sat me down, talked to me, and he even said, look, you're not gonna like this. Oh, first, before I should preface this by saying, one of the things he said to me after we administered all the tests again, he said, Marie, said, this didn't just come on recently. This is something that's been building up. This pressure to the head has been building up for a long time. And we're going to have to be very careful to release that pressure as slowly as possible so that you don't go deaf. And that was the first time anybody said that 4-letter word to me. Mm-hmm. And if you don't think that isn't a wake-up call, like, like right away, my wheels were cranking. I'm sure as I was sitting there listening to this, I was already processing, like, what career counseling center do I go to figure out what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? But he was on top of things, and that's when he said, you're not going to like this, but he sat down, he talked to me, asked me a ton of questions about playing, which the other doctor could have cared less, And he said, you're going to like this, but you're not going to be playing trumpet for a while. He took me out of trumpet playing. And actually, it was really hard because we were getting ready to go to Puerto Rico. We were doing Heldenleben at the Casals Festival. And it was, So the orchestra left me behind, and I sat around for a few months. But like I said, he treated it holistically, and thank God I'm fine. I'm fine now. I can easily set up a situation where I could trigger some symptoms, but
Yeah.
I know what to look for.
Your hearing's always been fine as long as I've known you.
Huh?
Exactly. Yeah. I never heard you say, huh? I'll say that. But so was there anything with Jacobs that you remember, like any, just one-liners or two-liners that really just stuck with you that you would hear him say in your head over and over? Anything like that?
One-liners or two-liners? I guess the famous line, song and wind and song. He started with wind and song, but then he changed it to song. Hear the song in your head and the wind,
Yeah. He, by the way, I remember talking to him on the phone because I only got to see him once, but I mentioned to that I was your student. And he was, of course, very complimentary. He loved you to death. But what I remember in this conversation was he said, if I could still see, you give me a week and I can go down there and play anything. That was his, tenaciousness about things.
Oh,
it was
sure,
like,
sure.
if I could see, I could do it. Give me a week. Give me a week.
Yeah.
So, well, that's amazing. And then there's a couple stories, I'm sure, like you might want to tell folks about, like the West Side Story thing you told me the other week. I think this is definitely worth mentioning.
The West Side Story. Okay, well, everybody knows the symphonic dances from West Side Story, of course. And I love the piece. And every time I saw that on the schedule, I knew for sure that I was going to be the one to play it. Phil assigned me the bebop stuff. Mm-hmm. So I got to play first on the West Side Story. Keith Lockhart from Boston Pops fame at the time was our associate or assistant conductor. He was getting, he was learning the trade. He was picking up on some of the stuff that Eric was doing to eventually go into the Boston Pops job. And this was on one of Keith's subscription concerts. So he programmed the West Side Story dances on the first half, and everything was going great. Having a ball playing it, you know, and we get to the section, the cool section with it, you know, cup mute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except that this god awful sound came out of the bell on my trumpet, and it was like something crossed my brain, like, oh my God, you can't remember how to, you've lost, you can't play anymore. You know, you hear about when at the end of your life, you see your whole life go. That's the first thing that I thought, oh dear God, and you could almost feel. I had principal trombone on my left, Steve Fry playing second trumpet on my right, and it was like time stood still. Everybody just froze, like, what in the heck is that? What is that sound? And I have to keep going. I mean, you can't just put your horn down and stop playing. And then there's that little interlude, and then it comes back in again. Well, you gotta go for it. And it was equally as offensive. No amount of Febreze could have eliminated the odor on that stand from those two snippets. Anyway, I was just like, oh. And I could tell the guys on both sides of me are like, something's not right. So I get ready for the next entrance. Fortunately, I had two trumpets on the stand. So I pick up the other trumpet thinking, well, maybe it's the trumpet, you know, and I put the mouthpiece in, play the next lick, and thank you, God, everything's fine. Perfect, you know? Okay, so it's not me. I guess I still have a career, you know? Finish the concert, and I'm sitting there, and Tony and Steve and the guys on both sides were like, what? And Steve grabbed the horn. He said, let me play that. He plays it. It sounds terrible.
Yeah. We
go to the back room, and Pete Norton, our resident John Deere bass trombone player, grabs the trumpet and goes, let's see what's wrong with this thing. And he tries to play it, and he look and he goes, oh, there's your problem, Marie. You blew so hard, you blew some of the solder off of the horn. And there was this little piece of, just a little bead. Okay, that's the end of it. You know, I'm going to go back on stage. I can play, no problem. I go back on stage, and behind me is our timpanist, Eugene Spino, who is normally very animated and lively. He looks like he's just lost his best friend in the world. And I said, Gene, are you okay? What's wrong? He said, oh man, what a night. And I go, what do you mean, what a night? He says, well, didn't you hear? Did you see what happened to me? And I looked at him, I said, I don't know what happened to you, but I know what happened to me. And as soon as I said that, yeah, he says, yeah, in the mambo section, I was playing the maracas, and one of my maracas exploded. And at that point, when he said exploded, I looked down, and it looks like a convention of ants on the riser, all these black little specks. What had happened was, while I was sitting there, before I played the cool section, it was after the mambo section, or maybe more than one of the beads just went right into the throat of the mouthpiece, into the lead pipe, and down the horn. And I always had this habit of emptying, this I learned from Bob Price, you always make sure you start with an empty water key.
Yeah.
Emptied the water key, and it must have trapped one or more of the beads, enough to keep the water key open for the most ungodly sound in the world. It was the worst 10, 12 seconds of my life.
That's amazing. Did you go to a stock backbore after that?
I'm sorry?
Did you go to a stock throat after that?
Stock throat?
No, you didn't. I know you didn't after that.
No, I did not.
What recordings are you most proud of in your time with the Cincinnati Symphony?
Oh wow, there are a number of recordings. I love the Star Wars recordings that we did, the John Williams recordings. Loved those a lot. Loved the Respighi Church Windows.
I was going to say that was probably the one of them for sure.
Yeah. And I loved the one that we did of Casey at the Bat with Frank Protos, where I got to show my jazz chops.
And in there, there's a Rhapsody in Blue, if I'm not mistaken, that you're
yes,
on too.
Yes, the original version.
Right.
Gosh, you've done your homework, Mark. I'm proud of you.
Well, I had to do it at some point in my life, so I figured I'd start later. If you saw my GPA. So, by the way, I believe we have, let's see, Greg Schnell's watching, Eric Dina, Chris Karajev is watching.
Oh my God, Chris!
So
that's my baby.
There's a whole lot of folks, but I wanted to mention.
He's one of the reasons I left the orchestra, so he could have a job there.
Well, I was going to talk about that actually. What was that like when you saw it? Because were you Chris's first teacher? Am I remembering this right?
Well, I don't know that I was his first teacher, but when he was a youngster, he used to ride his bike over to my place in Clifton for his lessons. And at the time I was, teaching at CCM, and unfortunately I didn't, with everything else that I was doing, brass rep class and teaching and orchestra. So I turned him over to Phil Collins. So he studied mostly with Phil Collins. Yeah. But Chris, I was so delighted because I knew, his dad was just a sweet man, just a lovely man. Yeah. And of course I knew his mom too.
Yeah. Well, they passed that down because Chris is a great guy. I know he's watching. Yeah. So, and I'm sure you were delighted when he wound up in that position.
So Chris is on?
It says he's on Facebook. So,
Chris.
Yes, he is smiling.
Wait a minute. Ta-da!
And Ashley Hall is too. So there's a lot of folks watching.
Ashley.
So many people. If I went through and mentioned everybody, it would take us all night, I think.
Good. I can stop talking then.
No, you can't, because I got a few more questions. So let's talk about your teaching though, because you taught at Miami of Ohio, I should say. So that's the University of Miami, right? I get that right? I always
Miami University.
Miami University.
Miami University of Ohio.
And of course Cincinnati, Indiana, and then Rice.
Right.
So can you talk about maybe how your teaching changed over the years? Did you feel it was pretty constant, or were there?
It changed?
I don't know. I'm asking. I would imagine it did.
I'm sure it did. Just like everything else, it's a process. And when Doc and I were talking, you can learn so much from different folks. And I learned so much from my own students. And, actually in getting ready for this interview, Mark, it dawned on me, and I don't know that I've ever taken these dots to connect. I think I learned a lot about teaching early on in my career because I worked with 2 blind boys.
Right.
Yes. And if you don't think that's a challenge, that's a real challenge. Trust me. Yeah. These young men not only had to have someone read the notes so that they could braille the notes, they would then braille their lessons, memorize their lessons, and then come to take their lessons. And when they would come in prepared, and I was working with, I hate to say it, with some students at CCM who came in and weren't prepared, it was like,
Yeah.
You can do this. I've got these 2 kids that, they come in prepared every week. And I learned so much about teaching from working with those 2. But I feel like I learned something from everyone. I think the growth that I experienced as a teacher really, I would like to think that I hope I did well at CCM and at IU, but I think the real growth was at Rice. And interestingly enough, since Rice.
Hmm.
And I don't know how to, I'm not sure that I know how to describe it further, but I just feel, yeah, I just feel that, yeah,
You know,
I'm just, maybe a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm no longer playing. So I feel like I can, I mean, I'm, not that I wasn't totally invested in the past, but it feels like there's more of me to invest.
right, right.
When I'm
Well,
not playing. I want to enjoy my students' success.
right. Well, I can certainly tell you what I remember the most. What sticks with me the most was, first of all, you had the most ringy buzz of about anybody I've ever heard on a mouthpiece, and I think you were very creative in problem solving. You know, like I remember working on Heldenleben, but then you're like, okay, we're going to go to Arbin, and you're going to do this on page 126, and you're going to change this exercise, and it was just, I think the real lesson with that is it stays with you a long time because it makes you do that on your own later when you're not around, and I always thought that was so important, and,
Wow.
and to be,
Good.
and yeah, of course. And to be obviously all the things you would say about air and all the things you'd say about singing and listening and,
Yeah.
and then how you picked your C trumpet up and played Pulcinella cold one day and I wanted to quit. So I remember that very clearly. And by the way, speaking of a couple folks, Chris Karajev says you seem to be getting younger. And
oh, thank you, Chris.
there's so many people, Ashley Hall, Ryan Gardner, I'm sure I missed some people. Gail Williams says hi.
Oh my God, Gail's here?
Mick Mulcahy too.
Oh, geez.
So, yeah, see now, aren't you glad you didn't know? You're nervous.
Yeah, I'm really going to get, I was, when we started this, I was like, I'd rather play a concert than
maybe not. Oh, I don't know about that. What about, so when you were playing, and this is another, I'm kind of going backwards just a little bit. Can you talk about, you had a warm-up routine that probably changed over the years. Can you kind of describe how you would get yourself ready every day? What was your normal routine of things you would do? Playing-wise.
Playing-wise, yes.
Playing-wise.
Well, for the longest time, I have to attribute a routine that really brought me into the focus of a routine. And it was through Mr. Davidson, through his book. I had an opportunity to meet him when he was at IU. And he gave me, he presented me with the book that he had just had published, the Trumpet Routines. And for the first time, probably, that book, I just really felt that it clicked for me. And it felt like a routine that kept all my fundamentals in place as they should be for the dictates of the job, no matter what. And from there, then I was able to branch out and kind of add my own little, salt and pepper and, just personalize it a little more. But that was the basis, I think, for a very solid routine. And if there are young people listening, you might want to check that book out. And of course, Ray Mace has a wonderful routine. And we all know the really good books,
Yeah, that was Louis Davidson. Somebody was just asking, Louis Davidson's, is it Trumpet Techniques?
Trumpet Techniques.
Trumpet
Techniques, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he was, he put that, I think he put that book out in the, thinking in the 70s,
Yeah, it's a great book. And it's very similar to Schlossberg. You can obviously see that.
Well,
right?
Yeah, you see the Clark influences, the Schlossberg influence, Arbin, but he has it more organized.
Right.
He just took the best of all those books and really organized them into a really well thought out routine. And I still use that book a lot.
Yeah. Well, we got to get you playing again so you can keep using it a lot.
No. That's for everybody else. I've had my moment in the sun. I've had
Oh,
my moment in the sun, you know, and
well,
grateful for it.
what about, well, and then you already answered the question about the orchestral brass class. So I was going to ask you about the orchestral rep class, but we talked about that a little bit ago. What
Right.
about, talk about, and you touched on it earlier. Can you talk about IWBC and Monarch Brass and how those things came and your role?
Oh my gosh, the year that Susan put the first conference together, 1993, I flew in for part of a day. I was between services and I couldn't, we were in the middle of May Festival, so you knew what May Festival was like here. I couldn't get away for much longer, so I flew in, I ate half a chicken dinner or lunch or whatever it was, met a bunch of folks, and it was just great. Shared a master class with Barbara Butler and Langston Fitzgerald. The three of us did a master class together, and you know what? I didn't want to leave. I wasn't ready to go back to the airport and fly back to Cincinnati. I wanted to stay there to meet all these wonderful people, all these wonderful musicians that I had heard of and had never had an opportunity to meet, especially like Susan, you know. We knew each other, but we had never met.
Right.
And so that was the beginning. And then 3 years later, 1996, Susan put together a tour of Monarch Brass. And again, I was surrounded by all women in this brass ensemble, and it's hard for you to understand what that would feel like, because I was always the only little girl in all these groups that I had played. Here I was. The 96 was when I retired from the symphony. Here I am retiring from a major symphony orchestra, and I'm sitting that summer on tour, and the horn section was Julie Landsman. There were about 2 or 3 gals from the Met Opera Orchestra, Nancy Gurderol from the Houston Symphony, Kristen Jerkscheit from the Colorado Symphony, Susan Slaughter, Carol Dawn Reinhardt, Amy Gilreath, trombones. I'm having a senior moment. Velvet Brown on tuba. Anyway, and Marin Alsop conducted.
You couldn't find
Marin
anybody.
carrying her little violin case with all these brass players, you know. It was a trip, seriously a trip. And for the first time, I mean, I really, literally, we were doing the, one of my favoriteest pieces is the liturgical fanfares.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to the ending and I was in tears, just looking around and realizing that here I am in the midst of an organization. We're all playing and it's one powerful voice and it's all women.
Yeah.
And coming from my perspective as the only little girl in just about every group, it was pretty powerful. And I had that same emotion in 2000 when I had an opportunity to host the conference here in Cincinnati at CCM. It was the same thing. By the end of that week in the conference, in the middle of the brass choir program, I became verklempt. You know, I was just like, ah! You know.
Well, and I just the last time we saw each other, I think, was at the IWBC. There was
last summer.
And I'm sorry, that was the first one I've ever had a chance to go to, and I have to say it's probably the healthiest environment of any brass conference I've ever been to. It was remarkable.
I could not have said it better. It might be a women's organization, but it's not just for women. It is so inclusive, so supportive. I mean, I can't say enough about
phenomenal playing. I mean, watching Gail Williams play the Hindemith Sonata, but
I know.
But I wasn't sure if she was playing because it looked so easy.
Oh yeah, she makes it look effortless. I mean, yeah, she's as we say in Italian, la regina.
What does that mean?
La Regina?
Yeah.
The Queen.
Oh, the Queen. Yes,
La
absolutely.
Regina.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Just what an amazing environment. But it's amazing how much you really paved the way. I mean, Teresa May in the chat says, thank you to you and the other women for paving the way, because you really, you tore through it, and we're all better off for that, of course. So,
Well, thank you. Thank
you
you.
know,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, and sort of the last question I had written down was, you've made a difference in so many people's lives, including mine. But kind of relating to what you were just talking about, well, maybe you just answered it. What does it feel like knowing there are so many people standing on your shoulders now? Did I Barbara Walters you just now?
I think you did.
Great.
There's just no way, Mark, there just have been so many people that have impacted my life. Excuse me, while I keep this together. I know that some women have experienced a lot of discrimination in this field, with the exception of some opportunities not to be able to go and audition. I haven't experienced some of those difficulties. And you're talking about, you've mentioned some names of folks who are in tune tonight with, or in on this conversation, who have impacted my life in so many positive ways. And I just, like I said, I feel really, really, really fortunate. And I have grown as a person and as a musician, but especially as a teacher, because of people like you and everyone else that have graced my life. I just I don't know how else to say it,
Well, we are all, blessed to have had you, and, and I have to say, I never thought all my teachers are women. That was not why.
Thank you.
I never thought that. I thought my teacher's a badass, and I want to know how she does that. And I think that everybody would say that, that it was never, you didn't think about it. You thought, how does she get that sound? How does that happen? And so that was, super, super important. And I'm so glad you did this. I mean, just so many people, well, let me just read a couple of comments, because Ashley Hall says, we love you so much, Marie. You've impacted our lives. Gail Williams says, you are a true giant in this field, both personally and musically. Thank you for building the way for so many of us. Susan Ryder, you're a ray of sunshine. Thanks for all you've been to so many of us. Mary Klozak, what a gift you are. So many people. So I'm glad I talked you into this.
I'm glad you taught. I am too. You knew I was really nervous about having to talk about myself for.
Well, it's,
whatever.
it's just so, it is so important. And, when I started kind of doing this project, I mean, it was obviously you were top of the list of people I wanted to get. I just had to make sure I knew what I was doing before I got to you. So I had to practice. I had to practice on other people. But
Practice.
That's right. And so I guess anything else you want to say that you're thinking? Like, is it? Are you more of a Skyline or Gold Star kind of person? I mean, what's?
Yes.
Hey, I do have a light question though, because one of the last times I saw you a couple summers ago, we went to a Reds game.
Oh yes, we did.
Right, and there was, and you talked to me, but I don't remember the story well enough, so I'm going to try to poke around and see if you can remember it. You talked to me about going to see the Reds in the World Series, and there was something about a set of tickets. Is this ringing a bell?
Oh yes, and it was the playoffs, and I gave them away. I wasn't into baseball.
But later you were.
Later I was like, how did you do that, Speziale? What the? Yeah, but we had a good time that night.
Yeah.
At the.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. People are writing in. What's your favorite duet book?
What's my favorite duet book? Oh well, my gosh, I used to love the Anstons. Yeah, some of those old timey, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's but it was. I'm just so glad you did this, and it was just so much fun, and so. But any closing thoughts you have for anybody overall, and then you and I can talk for a little bit after.
Sure. Any closing thoughts? Wow. Just for all of you that have tuned in, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, with this fella and me. And I know I've heard from a few folks that were planning to kind of tune in. So I'm just real delighted that we have one of the benefits of this nastiness that's going on in our world right now is to be able to do things like this. So thank you, Mark, for connecting me with the outside world besides my puppy.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm glad, and I'm thankful that Doc decided to.
Oh, wasn't that was fantastic? I only you could arrange that.
It's just a phone call. And Joyce Davis says, by the way, she says hello, Christina.
Hi, Joyce.
And Christina Cutts, you've changed my life in very short time.
Christina is writing. Christina, seriously, sorry, Christina. Can I share a little bit about what Christina's doing?
Please.
Christina is actually putting a book together about women brass pioneers, including Betty Glover. And correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, because sometimes I think I see little things up here. But some of the pioneers, Constance Weldon, who we sadly just lost last month. She was Sandy Palafian's teacher, Roy Lance. You know, she taught those guys. So Christina is really delving into our history. I'm helping her get some information about Betty Glover, because Betty is Mrs. G's 97 years old now. Yeah. And she, talk about a mentor. She has trouble hearing and seeing, but everything up here is firing on all cylinders. I mean, to the point where the last conversation, the only way she was able to realize that she was talking to me, because she was so frustrated, she didn't know who she was talking to. So she went through process of elimination. She asked me, do you have a dog? And I said, yes. She says, is his name Nico? And I said, yes. So she realized she was talking to me. So at 97, she could figure out how to do that, to figure out who she was talking to.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Amazing.
Incredible. Well, so many people are just I think Christina's throwing you a smiley face. Rick Bogart says it's a pleasure to hear you. There's just so many people that are just so glad to see you. And, but I guess I do have one more question. This is a weird question, but if you had a time machine and you had 3 stops to make.
Wow.
Where would you go?
Where would I go?
Yeah, what would the stops be?
I can tell you one place I would go in a New York minute, and that's my 4 years at the Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati. Those were the best 4 years of my life. Talk about growth, and talk about your life just, coming to Cincinnati in those 4 years. Where else would I go? Gosh, there's so
outside of my audition for school, of course.
Outside
of that. Outside of that.
I would take myself back to where I grew up in Ybor City.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see that through my adult eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think You said 3 or 4?
Oh, you can go 4 if you want.
Oh, if I had it to do all over again, I'd do all of it. How does that sound?
That sounds perfect.
That, I would do all of it. And Doc was talking about Bud. Bud Hurst said the same thing. He said, I could do it all over again.
Yeah.
I could do it all over again.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you just did it. So I tell you what, that might be a good place to stop. So, Marie, hang on just a second, but thank you so much to everybody that watched tonight. And
thank you, everybody. Stay well and safe. Love, hugs.
all right, I'll pause this. Or